The sun was positioned high over the city of Muskegon, Michigan, on a day that seemed ordinary to everyone except for two women whose lives were about to collide in a room where justice was the only currency. The courtroom of Judge Judy Justice was a place of solemnity, a theater of truth where the small details of human behavior were magnified under the lens of the law. On this particular day, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and the silent tension of dispute that had turned neighbors into adversaries. The case was numbered 3008. It featured Dominique Rogers, a woman who carried the heavy heart of a pet owner who had lost something precious, and Tamala Thomas, a neighbor who found herself accused of a crime that she claimed was merely a misunderstood act of kindness. At the center of the storm was a small, 13-week-old French bulldog puppy, a creature of innocence caught in the middle of human fallibility. The court came to order with a familiar command for all to rise. Judge Judy, a woman of sharp intellect and even sharper wit, took her seat. Her eyes, experienced and discerning, swept over participants. She looked at Dominique Rogers, who stood as a plaintiff, suing for the return of her puppy or the value it represented. The judge began the inquiry by looking at the complaint. She noted that Dominique Rogers identified herself as a dog breeder. When questioned about her experience, Dominique admitted that she was just starting out. It was her first time. Her primary source of income was her work as a customer service representative. She had two dogs. One was a male 1.5 years old, purchased from a breeder in Pontiac, Michigan. The second was a female puppy, only 13 weeks old, obtained from a local breeder who had been in the business for 30 years. The judge leaned forward, her expression one of disbelief. The facts of the case were clear, but baffling. On February 27th, at approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Dominique had let her dogs out for a potty break. The property was not fenced. The puppy was only 13 weeks old. To the judge, this was an incomprehensible choice. She compared letting a puppy of that age out alone to letting a 6-month-old baby who was just learning to crawl wander out into the world. Dominique explained that she was only letting her out to use the bathroom, something she considered normal. But the judge was quick to point out that it was not normal for a puppy so young and untrained. A dog who had been with an owner for over a year might know the way home. But a 13-week-old puppy was a blank slate, full of curiosity and devoid of direction. The timeline was short. Less than 15 minutes after the dogs were let out, Dominique realized a little girl was missing. Panic set in. She put on her shoes and ran down the street, calling the puppy's name, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. She saw a neighbor near an abandoned house on the corner, a house that had recently suffered fire. She began asking around, desperate for any sign of her dog. It was here that the testimony of a witness became crucial. Lana Carson, an animal control officer for the county, was present in the courtroom. She was not a neighbor, but she had been in the area on that fateful afternoon of February 27th for unrelated animal welfare checks. As she drove down the road in an unmarked vehicle, her attention was caught by the activity near the burned house. Officer Carson described the scene with the precision of a professional. She saw 2 French bulldogs running loose in the front yard. One was tan and white, older and larger. The other was a small, tan puppy. There were no fences to keep them contained. She watched as a woman in the yard bent down and picked up the small puppy. That woman was a defendant, Tamala Thomas. The officer, acting on her instinct as a dog catcher, rolled down her window and offered assistance. She asked if the woman needed help with the dogs. The reply from a woman holding the puppy was short and certain. No, he has got it. The officer looked for the person mentioned and saw a male standing in the driveway of the house. Assuming the situation was under control, she watched as the larger dog continued to wander down the block, untethered and unaccompanied. She offered help a second time, and again was told that the man had it. Frustrated by a lack of concern for the wandering adult dog, the officer made a comment to her co-worker that they would likely be receiving a call about a lost Frenchie later that day. She saw Tamala Thomas standing there, holding the puppy, as she drove away to attend to her scheduled calls. The judge turned her attention to Tamala Thomas. The ball was now in her court. Tamala remembered the lady in the white van, though she did not recall being asked for help 3 times. Her version of events was different. She claimed that when she arrived home from grocery shopping, She saw the two dogs across the street. She saw two men who appeared to be trying to catch them. She decided to help. She crossed the street, grabbed the small puppy near the fence, and handed it off to a man who was standing by a silver car. She claimed she acted as a good Samaritan, believing the men were the rightful owners. Tamala's mother, Miss Phillips, stepped forward to support her daughter's story. She had been at the house watching the baby while Tamala was at the grocery store. She recalled Tamala returning around 2 o'clock and mentioning that she had helped some people get their dog back. To the mother, it was a simple act of kindness that had been blown out of proportion. However, the plaintiff, Dominique, told a more emotional story. She claimed that later that day, while she was outside crying and calling for her dog, Tamala walked right past her. Dominique described Tamala as wearing a long gray coat with long black hair, looking beautiful but indifferent to the suffering of her neighbor. Dominique wondered why a true Good Samaritan would not have stopped to ask what she was looking for, especially after having just handled a puppy of the same breed. The judge reviewed a police report submitted by Dominique. The report stated that on February 28th, Dominique reported the dog stolen, claiming a tall male in a red coat and a white hat had taken the puppy from her yard. This information had come from another neighbor, but it added a layer of confusion to the proceedings. As the hearing progressed, the judge remained focused on the fundamental issue of responsibility. She was not prepared to label Tamala Thomas a thief. There was no concrete evidence of conspiracy or theft. The testimony of the animal control officer confirmed that Tamala had picked up the dog, but it did not prove what happened after the officer drove away. Tamala's explanation, while perhaps convenient, was plausible enough to create doubt. The judge's words were firm and carried the weight of a life lesson. She told Dominique that the entire situation could have been avoided if the dogs had not been left unattended in an unfenced yard. The burden of care belonged to the owner. She spoke about the breeding of dogs not as a hobby or a sport, but as a skilled art form that required education and constant attention. The case was dismissed. The legal battle ended, but the emotional toll remained. Dominique was left with the consequences of a 15-minute lapse in supervision. Tamala walked away, maintaining her innocence and her status as a misunderstood helper. In the quiet aftermath of the courtroom, the lessons were clear. Responsibility is the foundation of care. Kindness is often a matter of perspective, and the truth is sometimes lost in the gaps between what we see and what we believe. Dominique Rogers left the court wanting nothing more than her dog back, realizing that the value of Penelope was far greater than any sum of money. Tamala Thomas left feeling vindicated, but perhaps more aware of the complexities of being a neighbor. As the doors of the court closed, the story of the missing Frenchie became a cautionary tale for the residents of Muskegon. It was a story about the importance of fences, both literal and figurative, and the delicate balance of trust and duty that holds a community together. The little tan puppy remained a memory, a reminder that in a world of uncertainty, the things we love require our constant and unwavering protection.